Welcome to the Livelong Podcast, where your health is your power. I'm your host, Rachel Lehmann-Haupt. Today, so many women move through midlife feeling disconnected from their bodies, unsure what's normal, and often they're told to override their instincts. That's the topic we're going to be talking about today with Dr. Jessica Shepard. She's a board-certified OB-GYN menopause expert, the chief medical officer of HERS, and author of the book Generation M. Dr. Shepard will also be joining us at the Livelong Women's Health Summit, which is coming up in just 2 weeks at the historic Masonic Theater in San Francisco, April 17th and 18th. She'll be joining others, including our headliner, Jane Fonda, Dr. Stacy Sims, Dr. Mary Claire Haver. We're so excited to have you at the conference, Dr. Shepard. And if you haven't bought your ticket yet, please do promo code Rachel and you'll get $50 off. Welcome, Dr. Shepard.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be there in April. And I think when we look at the lineup, which you mentioned some of them there, I think it's phenomenal to be in the presence of such amazing company. And I can't wait to get there.
Yes, we're so happy to have your voice in the mix. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about your book, Generation
Yeah.
X, which I've read. And I really like your approach because you guide women through menopause in a way that really teaches them to A, about scientific insights, and B, really to listen to their bodies. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the key scientific insights that you help women, make new decisions. But then I also want to talk about sort of listening to your body.
Yeah, when we think of this time frame in life and just to kind of preface, I was in academic medicine as a OB-GYN, focusing mainly on GYN and surgery for 15 years. And what I found is, fundamentally I did my background in exercise physiology. So I was always fascinated with the body and lifestyle and what the body has the capability to do, but also knowing the physiology of it. And fast forward, going through med school and being in practice for so long, I realized that at midlife, there was this kind of collision at which women were entering a space where they didn't quite know what was going on with their bodies, but they didn't know also how to explain it, where to find the answers. And I would say, even from the medical community, we didn't really have the answers, or we didn't really know how to guide patients and women through this time frame in life. And I'm so glad we're at a point where we're able to do that better. But that's really kind of the emphasis of what my practice is, and the book as well, is showcasing the bigger picture to this midlife shift in not just hormones. Obviously, hormones has a huge portion to do with that, but there's a lot that has to do with the physiology of the body because of the hormone shifting. But what we need to do on our end to kind of counteract that shift, and then also the emotional component, which I find is fascinating, and I've delved into even more since releasing the book on
Yeah.
what women truly go through emotionally.
Tell me, let's talk a little bit about that, the emotional factor and also lifestyle factors. I mean, how do you approach your patients in that way?
I think that when I come in, when I sit them down, one of the first things I say to them is, tell me your story. Tell me what got you here, because it's going to be different for everyone who walks in the room. What I do find is that a lot of times it's built on symptoms, right? Like their symptomatology of why they're there. But when I kind of challenge or help women come more to how they got there. Like, what is the emotional landscape that got them there, how they're feeling, their mood, what's going on in their life outside of hormones. So, like, whether that's relationships, whether that's with raising children, taking care of older parents, bringing that into the picture so that there's room and space to hold that as well, in addition to the hormone changes, because I can shift your hormones and fix those really quickly with what we have as tools. But I also want women to walk out being aware of where they are in that actual space and time, so that that also plays a part of the picture as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I worked with Dr. Luann Brizendine, who's going to be at our conference as well, on the book The Female Brain, and also the book The Upgrade. And so much of what she talks about in that book is about the psychosocial aspects of menopause or midlife, and that how much that has an influence on, I mean, it's, she would claim that it's hormone driven, but how much it has an influence on women's sort of mental health and that affects physical health as well.
Oh, I definitely think, even in my own journey through uh, perimenopause, that's what I'm in right now, that transition, is I didn't even realize in my own life, my personal life, career, all of it together, how much emotional played a component in that, and being able to sit in it and recognize it, name it, and then be able to adjust it because I know what it is. I don't think women inherently are supported or taught to understand their emotion. We're usually told to stifle them, not talk about it, be silent about it. But what that does over the course of 30, 40 years is doesn't really give us a landscape to when it's now going kind of awry to express it because we never have.
Right. So why do so many women lose trust in their own bodies or instincts? And how does the medical establishment really, sort of, help hurt this?
Oh, yeah. I'll start with the latter. I think that we are never taught that in medicine. We are really focused in medicine to focus on catastrophic, like what is damaged, what is pathologic, and we can fix it. And I think that's for good use, obviously, because when humans have something really wrong with them, I would want a doctor on my side at that point. But what we haven't accounted for in that is how do I create the experiential part of what a patient is going through? And that has to come with us being trained to give insight to how the mind works into our body, whether it's a health perspective, emotional health, landscape, all of that. We're really not taught that. I do think we have the ability to do that in the future, but where we are now, that's not what we were taught. And so the medical community is more aware of it, but we were never taught that. Now, going to how emotions and how the brain really captures or is captured in this menopausal transition is, and I did a TED talk on this because, if you're offered a TED talk, I'm like, absolutely, I'm going to talk about menopause. But what I did do is also talk about the emotional capacity of women to go through this time frame because the change in estrogen and progesterone actually impact our neurotransmitters, our dopamine, our serotonin, and what the interaction is between that. And quite frankly, the body is just the vehicle for what the mind does. And so if the mind is going through this kind of tumultuous shift with hormone change, then that's what the body is only able to represent from that. So if we can pay attention to that, then we can have a whole mind body experience through menopause.
And what signals should women be listening to that they're not? And why are we taught to override those?
Oh, we could probably have a whole podcast on that. But if
Let's
you
do
look
it.
if you look at actually the framework, societal framework, historically, and it's to no one's fault, it was built that way, is very patriarchal in framework. And with that comes the ability for women to be sold or told or taught, this is what you're allowed to say, this is what you're not allowed to say. This is what you're able to represent in your body when you're feeling it and what you're not. And so when we're conditioned that way, obviously that's what we'll do. This is over generations and centuries.
Right.
So now listening,
Quiet. Don't be too big. Don't be too
don't be
loud.
too big. And if something's really going on that your body is sensing, don't pay attention to it. And so, especially when it's heightened. Now, if you look at the physiology of hormones, when there is suppression of, namely estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, your body is actually becoming more in a ratio flux. And in that is when your body is sensing more of these, I don't feel quite there, something's going on, I can't name it, in imbalance. But because we have never had experience to feel that in our body and being like, oh man, this is not good. I need to talk to someone about it. I need help. We're taught to what? Go to the default, which is shh, don't talk about it.
Yep. I mean, it's funny. I spent many years covering fertility, and it was like there's a societal message like women shouldn't have talked about their fertility problems, and then it sort of translated into women shouldn't talk about their menopause. Quite, and like luckily consciousness raising groups has helped that, but
Mhm.
still there is that old instinct that we should, I mean, even, our mothers probably, instilled that in us to some extent.
Oh, classic example. And I wrote about that in my book is my mom obviously had a menopausal experience to some degree, whatever that was. But when I ask her about it, she doesn't really have much to offer me and
Yeah,
to tell me about, and this is what I went through, or this is what I did. There is nothing there. It's like it almost was like some time frame which passed over, and now we're here on the other
no
side of it.
consciousness around it because,
Oh.
yeah, fascinating. So what are some of the biggest disparities you're seeing, particularly with women of color?
Oh, I love this topic because obviously, as a woman of color myself, as a Black woman and an OB-GYN in women's health, I see this day in, day out. And so seeing it, right? So that's the patient side of it where I get to experience it with who I take care of, but also knowing the data behind it is obviously there is a huge gap because when we look at women of color, when we look, the SWAN study was probably one of the best studies that we could see for prospective analysis of the menopausal experience defined within ethnicity. And I think it's important because it allows one, providers to know the data and to say, okay, when my patients come in of different ethnicities, at least I can lend better insight to how they may experience this transition. But also on the other side of that is for patients who now can see this data and being like, oh my goodness, I didn't know, for example, that when we think of hot flashes and night sweats, Black women typically will start them earlier, right? So in the maybe mid to latter 40s versus other ethnicities, which might start experiencing them a little bit later. But not only that, more intense. And so imagine you have Black women on average who are starting them earlier, having them more intense. And not only that, like I'm like, go even more is that the duration of them are longer than most ethnicity when we look at women and their experience for vasomotor symptoms.
And
So,
it's not just the physiology though, also
right.
it's also the establishment and the way that they've historically treated Black
Yeah.
women in
Yeah.
medicine.
Right. So you have that feature of it, which you just explained, the physiologic side of it. But now it's the dismissal of inherently Black women across all of medicine for any, whether it's pain, discomfort, not being seen and heard, and then not being able to have the access and resources to the things that's going to help them. So that's a really, when you look at like the entire framework of healthcare, healthcare then in women, healthcare then in Black women, when you kind of layer it out, is really substantial when you think of that gap. And what is the way that we can close that gap for women of color to then maybe get to the level of women in general in healthcare, and then women in general to be able to being like women's healthcare is healthcare, period.
Right, right. Women's healthcare is healthcare, period. I love that line. What does it look like when a woman is overriding her inner voice, black, white, anyone? I mean, what does it show up as symptomatically, psychologically?
It shows up as lack of what I call self-trust, being able to trust the body to know what is right and being able to discern I have a voice. I can speak up for myself and advocate. And typically how you see that play is not being able to recognize what's going on in your body, which only will give you a little bit more when we think of subdued feelings, which can then lead to depression or anxiety or feeling dismissed that can then kind of create this persona of doom and gloom. And
Mhm.
that's typically what we see in women when they go through this transition. It's almost as if, well, I do feel this, but I'm not afraid. I'm afraid to say something, but also where would I get the help? Is there help out there? And this sucks. And then over time, you're just like, I just give up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the last thing we want, right?
Last thing we want.
Or slap them with some antidepressants, which is what a lot of doctors do now.
Oh, that's mainly the reason when we see between the ages of 45 to 55 of increased diagnosis of anxiety and depression, which only leads to increased prescription of antidepressants.
Yeah, right. And while antidepressants are great to some extent, it doesn't really do the total job of taking women through this
It
passage.
does, and especially if there is another way to navigate that by helping women decrease that ratio influx of estrogen and progesterone, because the women who really do need antidepressants, that's what it's great for. But to kind of like just everyone gets one for not really knowing the reason why, then that's a problem too.
Right? It can't just be a band-aid.
Yeah.
a one size fits all. So what should
Exactly.
a woman do? What's your advice for a woman to do if she feels dismissed or, isn't taken seriously?
Yeah, the first thing is to know is to sit in that and being like, I am feeling this, and this is something that's real. Second thing I say is go find another provider, right? Our job is to, I say this to all my patients. I'm like, my goal is to present you with all the information so that you can make a wonderful, informed decision. So I kind of call myself the Sherpa of midlife. Like, I'm like, here's all the different guides and ways that you can go. And in the end, I want you to have so much insightful information that you make the best choice for yourself because that choice could change between the time we're in the office to 2 months down the road, maybe when they build more confidence or they feel better about themselves because they've started some hormone replacement therapy, to then make, another decision, whether it's with nutrition or exercise, right? You're kind of like trying to build this platform for women to be able to get to the next level, to get to the next level, and to climb this next chapter in their life in a different way than like descending steps, which is typically how we
Yeah.
look at menopause as like, oh, we're just going to keep going down from here. Is no, I want to build you up.
No, no, no. We don't want that. We don't want that. We want to be built up.
Yeah.
Just as we're building up our muscles too, right?
Exactly. Building up your muscles. You know how I feel about that too.
Yes, exactly. So, one of the other things that I find that I hear a lot from my friends, women friends, is that when you reach, midlife, I mean, your girlfriends become so important.
Yeah.
And the idea of sort of reflecting back what they say about your experience and being able to also take that as a piece of empowerment.
I think that community is one of the biggest things that we see in women that they're really able to do. That's one of our strong points is we really know how to build and foster community. But when we think of our health, like from a health perspective, and this has been proven in many studies, that in the end, when we look at aging, when Dan Buettner did his study on the blue zones, one of the things that impacted health more as we were aging is community. And so, as women are aging, there's a lot of reasons why this is important. Is one, women typically live longer than men, right? So, typically, whether they have a partner or not, maybe the males in their life may not, survive as long as they are. But then it's the community. For someone who may pass and then now you're alone, do you have community to sustain you and to support you? And we know that it has very direct implications on health. And when we call it well span, like living longer, but are you living longer well? And what does your health play a factor in that as
Yeah,
community?
community. I mean, so and also taking, that sense of community and that what your friends reflect back to you and taking that into your healthcare experience and saying if you're dismissed, saying, wait, 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 but my girlfriends all, are seeing this in me or supporting me, then it's got to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. I got your back. Whatever you're doing, I'm here for you. When you're going through a rough time, we're here for you. And that can, be something where it doesn't matter who in the community is going through a rough time. There's always going to be someone there to foster, lift up, and support that person.
Amazing. Okay, one more question. So, what's
Yeah.
one way a woman today can start listening to her own inner voice instead of overriding it?
Yeah, I think inner voice is important. I think that women can take pause more when they're feeling something and being like, what am I feeling? But also answering the question of what do I want? Many times when I ask women, what do you want? It's a pause. It's like, I never thought about that. Defining what you want and then making a decision that's not based out of fear. Most times when we're not willing to do something, it's out of fear. And so the way that you can decrease fear is to ask more questions. Be more curious about if it's hormones, saying, I have concerns about it. What would happen if this? I have a family member with this. What does that mean for me? And most times when I probe, because I sense that there's hesitation or concern, it comes back with, well, I have this hesitation because blah, blah, blah. Right. So I had to kind of dig it out. I want women to being like, I have this concern. There's no shame in that. I have this concern because of this. What does that mean for me? And if someone's not able to answer that in a clear way or in a way that, it feels maybe dismissive, then that's when it's time to find someone else who might be able to better help you in that journey.
So the advice here, sound advice, is don't override your inner voice. Really
Yeah.
listen to it, speak it out loud.
Mhm.
Don't act out of fear. And thank you so much, Jessica, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to meeting you at the conference.
I am so excited and I can't wait to meet everyone that's there. And if you're watching here, please get your ticket because we are going to have a fabulous time.
Great. See you soon. See you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.